Well, I never thought I'd see the day that this is happening. Not only am I reviewing a new episode of Doctor Who written by Stephen Moffat, but I've spent months talking about new episodes by Russell that are pretty bad for the most part. But Boom is actually one of the best episodes the new era has to offer. Seriously, despite Wild Blue Yonder and another episode which I won't ruin the surprise for, this, by far, is one of the best episodes of Doctor Who in years. And it's a Moffat episode. Did I not spend well over a year criticising his Doctor Who back in 2022? Well, yes, I did. And one of the reasons his Doctor Who being so terrible annoyed me so much was because I knew he could do so much better. And here is living, breathing proof of that. After 7 years away from the show, he's come back with the man who always pointed him in the right direction back in the day. And despite the man who pointed him in the right direction being extremely washed and has almost fully lost it, Moffat seemingly hasn't missed a beat. Despite a few bits of stink, this episode's great, and I'm genuinely really excited to review it. So let's go! This episode opens brilliantly, instantly showing off this great looking battlefield with these two soldiers trying to make it back home. One thing that does detract from this setting, however, is all of the smog throughout the battlefield, as they don't really give you a sense of the scale of the planet they're on, and it really detracts from the overall view. However, the setup of this dad character is quite nice, and the relationship set up with his daughter who can't act is so sweet that you'd almost be convinced that something bad is gonna happen. Moffatism at its finest. One thing I do have to compliment about this story right off the bat, however, is its use of world building, which, believe me, I'm very shocked to be saying given that this is an episode written by Moffat, and one of my biggest issues with his era compared to the Golden Age was that the world building was absolutely horrific. Like, there were so many interesting and creative concepts sprinkled throughout, but the execution was always so poor and clearly not thought out that it made the whole era feel so disconnected and messy compared to Russell's good era of Doctor Who, which had excellent world building. But the usage of villain guard weaponry, seen all the way back in Moffat's first story in Series 1, and the reintroduction of the Anglican Marines, introduced in the mid-Series 5 Angels two-parter, the Weeping Angels should have been a one-off villain, and every subsequent appearance killed their mystique and ruined the concept of them further, don't at me. Anyway, the reintroduction of the Anglican Marines also really do strengthen this story and just make it feel like it's actually a Doctor Who story. A big issue with the Russell Penn Series 14 episodes so far is that despite the blatant lazy copying from other stories, is that it's almost too experimental, and it doesn't feel like Doctor Who. It feels like it's desperately trying to appeal to a new audience of mostly babies, and is low-key forgetting what makes Doctor Who, Doctor Who. And while experimentation is good and very important, especially for a show like this, Russell's leaning towards fantasy instead of sci-fi makes it lose a lot of its core appeal, especially with the way Russell writes fantasy. And by that I mean poorly, and even then poorly's probably too good of a word for it. The experimentation feels more like another stupid kid show doing experimental stuff wearing the skin of Doctor Who. And another great thing about Moffat using these two established things in his story, unlike a lot of Moffat's references to his own work in Doctor Who in the past, these two things are both actually relevant to the story and are integral parts of the plot instead of just cheap fan wank. I do really like how this story hints straight away about the twist of this war, with Carson talking about how some people think the Castarians are in the fog, or even are just the fog, which is why they can't be seen. And you might think that that sounds really stupid, but for once, it's actually meant to sound stupid, and plays a key part in the twist of the story later. Subtle foreshadowing in a Moffat story that's actually subtle. It may only be temporary, but we're actually so back. So we get some good lines setting up the ambulance's problem, before Carson seems to forget he isn't the one who's blind and falls down before he steps on a landmine and dies, setting off an ambulance. Maybe this wouldn't feel so contrived if we could actually see this place properly, and the lack of shots showing him actually trip really doesn't help either. Another episode directed by Julianne Robertson that has shots missing, making a scene feel messy and unfinished. Hate to say it again, but the directors for the 60th were right there. Don't get me wrong, she still does a pretty decent job overall directing, but it's very clear that action scenes are not her strong suit. And whether it's the script or her not including crucial shots, doesn't really matter, because ultimately it's making the stories themselves worse due to whoever's incompetence is to blame here. So we get a really well done and effective scene of Vader being killed due to his condition being deemed unacceptable, which immediately sets up an interesting threat for this story, given that blindness obviously isn't fatal, and it's said that he'd recover in a month. And it's just a fascinating way of setting up the antagonist and building interest in the story, given the few hints that we've had to the story's overall message and eventual twist at the end. So the Doctor hears him die because the TARDIS is just here for some reason because plot, before we get a pre-credit sting as he steps on one of the landmines and it starts to activate. Holy shit. Ignoring a few bits of tism here and there, what an effective opening for this story. Great mystery build-up, a few subtle bits of foreshadowing for the eventual twist in the story, which is super rewarding for repeat watchers, and a great tone set right off the bat. Why is Moffat already doing so much better than Russell has in his last 3 stories? This episode already feels like it has so much more sauce, and it's only been going for 6 minutes so far. The concept alone of can the Doctor save the day without moving is already so much more inherently interesting compared to almost anything in Series 14 so far. Except you. I love you.
And music is mine!
So Ruby approaches the Doctor with some great build-up before we get something that, at this rate, I never thought we were going to get. And that is actual character for 15 and Ruby. I know, I'm just as shocked as you, because despite them both just sort of being nothing for the past 3 stories, they're both full of so much character in this story. It's such a breath of fresh air compared to what we had before. Not only do they communicate like actual people and actually react to the situation appropriately for both characters, especially the Doctor.
I was kind of hoping for a beach.
What do you think this is?
It's not a beach.
I'll give it time. Everywhere's a beach eventually.
But they're both so much more fleshed out in this story. It's seriously so refreshing to see. That being said, the fact that the first thing the Doctor says to Ruby isn't, "Ruby, I'm standing on a landmine," makes this an instant 3 out of 10 practically unwatchable garbage.
Fucking dirty little...
He's done it again!
He's done it again!
That is a
You
fact!
fucking little bastard!
He does
He
it!
does it!
He's
He's done it again! You
saved it again.
dirty bastard!
At least this episode doesn't get the landmine off the Doctor in a dumbass way, and it actually has an impact on the story and isn't just filler in an already boring story, don't at me. And back on the everything's a beach line for a second, I gotta say, not only is it an excellent line on its own which works well for the story, but it's also a great look into the Doctor's perspectives on worlds and time. Given that erosion and eventual decay of land is just an inevitability everywhere, the fact that the Doctor can see everything as a beach, hundreds and maybe even thousands of years before it actually happens, is such an interesting perspective to have, and makes perfect sense for a Time Lord who's lived thousands of years to have. Moffat dialogue in Doctor Who has been so severely missed after years of cardboard with about as much depth as a teaspoon. Credit where it's due, I could slander him to the rest of time, but my god, when he tries, Moffat can genuinely write some of the best dialogue in the show. And this shows he clearly still has that dog in him. So Ruby describes the landmine to the Doctor, and the Doctor explains how the theme of this episode is very overtly anti-capitalist, which is a message that I am all for, and hopefully this story doesn't sacrifice the brains of anyone to fulfill this message.
Can you check and see if anyone needs help?
You need help.
I'm not even screaming yet. Priorities.
Oh my god. This is actually the Doctor. I know I'm probably going to reinforce this point loads throughout the review, but it cannot be understated how much better 15 is in this story compared to almost every other episode of the series, because he just actually feels like the Doctor. The sense of always putting others before yourself with no second thought of it, being a sarky, cheeky twat in the process, actually being an integral part of the plot and not just feeling like a spare part that's going along. While I personally am an advocate for Moffat never being in charge of Doctor Who ever again, if he can write the Doctor this well still, given that he had basically nothing to go off from other stories, then I personally hope that Russell continues to bring him back after Christmas this year. I have no idea when I'll actually be able to get this video out, but hopefully it's within the year and Series 15 hasn't came out yet. God knows how well that statement's gonna age. Funnily enough, we get another moment in this episode which is absolutely gormless, and for once, I can't even blame Moffat for this.
It's vacuum drones, that's all. Hoovering up the smoke so that nobody can choke to death before they are safely shot.
Okay, this isn't what I meant, but I can blame Moffat for this, because this story gives us no indication or direction that the smoke is dangerous in any way. Especially since we don't see anyone coughing it, or choking it, and it seems to have no effect on anyone.
Of course, the fog's been analysed and it's just fog.
And considering the eventual twist in this story, wouldn't it be a bit stupid for these drones to even exist? And would that not make the Anglican Marines theory on who they're fighting incredibly fucking short-sighted and moronic? I'm only 10 minutes into this episode so far, but I'm already starting to get the sense that I might have been wrong and the story isn't even good. Wouldn't be the first time I've been incredibly wrong about the quality of a Moffat episode, so it's not entirely out of the question, but let's hope not. Anyway, my original point of something I can't blame Moffat for is that apparently this is Ruby's first time on an alien world, and this is just... Huh? What? Huh? So despite the last episode quite clearly establishing that despite the unaltered chemistry, the Doctor and Ruby had been travelling together for 6 months, Russell, you can cope about it all you want, it's better to just admit you made a mistake. Yet this is apparently her first time on another planet? What the fuck have these two donuts been doing the entire time if they've been together for 6 months and he hasn't even taken her to another planet yet? Yeah, bull fucking shit. As fucking if he hasn't taken her to another planet after 6 months. What an absolutely brainless thing to write into the show. And again, I can't even blame Moffat for this, because genuinely, what was Russell trying to cook writing that shit in episode 2? Also, literally space little shits. She's already seen another alien world. Obviously, being on one and seeing one are different, but still, this sucks. Oh, and before I get the inevitable cope that the 9th Doctor never had a story off Earth with Rose despite having an actual full series with her, may I remind you that we are outright told that they've been off-world together.
The Doctor took me to this planet a while back. It was much colder than this. They called it Women Wept. The planet was actually called Women Wept because...
Yeah, Russell don't write them like this anymore. I mean, don't get me wrong, similar to a lot of stuff in this series which is way too rushed and happens without build-up, the scene itself is fine, but it just doesn't work given the context that it's in, making it ridiculously contrived. It's almost as if this series is so structurally and narratively fucked that it needed a complete do-over from the ground up to be remotely comparable to anything that Russell wrote for Doctor Who before. Remember when Russell's worst series was widely accepted to be Series 2? A series that still blows most of the show out the water? LOL. So Ruby picks up this testicle tube that has the remains of Veta inside, and once again, almost as if she lacks any depth or something, Ruby severely underreacts to this, creating a complete disconnect from her character to the audience. Don't get me wrong, Ruby's characterization in this episode is at least something, compared to her first 3 appearances, which have been essentially nothing. But this scene to me highlights something quite unintentionally funny in this story that's being caused by Russell, which I've actually criticised Moffat for in the past. And that's clearly half-arsing and not caring about the series enough, to the point where you notice that for a single story, a character, or in this case, 2 characters, completely revert to a way that others were written before, and no one in production noticed or stopped it. And once you notice, it's incredibly hard to go unnoticed. In Series 10, despite its avid wrong defenders thinking the 12th Doctor has character development, they always seem to have to completely ignore the fact that in Eaters of Shite, he completely reverts to how he was in Series 8 for absolutely no rhyme or reason, and despite being showrunner, Moffat didn't even notice this and didn't tell the writer to change the way she wrote the Doctor in the story to be more fitting of his Series 10 character. Or he didn't just fucking change it himself since, you know, he's in charge. And in this case, well, just listen to this dialogue and think of what it reminds you of.
I heard a scream, I guess it was that.
He was being smelted.
It's a good word, smelted, isn't it?
Not at the
I've never
moment.
used the word smelted before, it's never come up. New planet, new word, landmine. Oh, I am having a day.
Okay, are you getting scared because you're just babbling now?
Toss it in your hand.
Now tell me with a straight face that that wasn't just 12 and Clara dialogue.
What's wrong?
I don't know. Maybe the smell?
I know, it's everywhere.
You're amazing.
Had some experience. Sonata to Bazrak. And a friend. He had the most enormous ego.
Takes one to know one.
So you recognize me then?
You're wearing a different coat.
You saw straight through that.
Deep cover. In my school. Why? Where's the teeth? What have you done with him?
He's fine. Clara. You should over now.
I think it's over here.
I bought it.
From where?
A shop.
No.
Might have been a tramp.
You don't have any money. When did you stop believing in everything?
When did you start believing in impossible heroes?
Don't you know?
I think you'll find I have a certain genetic advantage.
It is not a competition about who can die slower.
It definitely would be me, though, wouldn't it? Are you cross with me?
I am not cross. But if I was cross, it would be your fault. And yes, I am cross.
I guessed that.
I am extremely cross.
And if I hadn't changed my face, would you be cross?
I would be cross if I wasn't cross.
Why? You're very, realistic.
Tongues.
Shut up. Yes, I have a plan.
Can you explain your plan without using the word sonic screwdriver? Because you might have forgotten the Sheriff of Nottingham has taken your screwdriver, just saying. So it's a screwdriver.
Right, okay, well, let's...
You get the point. While they don't act exactly like them all of the time, and I can at least appreciate that these two finally feel like characters, for fucking once, it is incredibly lazy and extremely telling that apparently no one noticed that they're acting just like the 12th Doctor and Clara, respectively. This does not excuse how lackadaisical the writing is here from Moffat and Davies, but yet, this derivative bollocks is the best characterization they get all series. Absolutely shameful! You utterly incompetent pair of deranged tomatoes. That being said, this scene, regardless of those two knobs' belligerence, is still extremely well done and effective. So the Doctor wants Ruby to throw him the urn so he can counterbalance his weight and put his foot back on the ground. And this whole scene is so well done, the second that Ruby refuses to throw it to him because it's just safer to give it to him. While the Doctor panics and his heart rate goes up, with the mine getting closer to setting off, all of this building at once is fantastic. The first time in recent memory that Doctor Who has actually managed to make close-ups and shaky cam enhance a scene instead of detract from it, as it absolutely rockets the tension and immersion through the roof here. It's all so fantastic. And despite the likeness of 12 and Clara being at its worst in this scene, it's undeniable that the dialogue exchanged between the two here is great, and really does enhance this tense moment well, as there is literally no margin for error. One wrong move, and it's over. And it goes without saying at this point that the performances from both of them are brilliant. Although, had Russell not made the Doctor look like such a pussy in the last 3 stories, then him crying here would really further have boosted the drama. But because we already know that he's such a big wimp, him crying, unfortunately, is just another reminder of the Doctor's missed potential as an overall character. And this huge misfire is something I even picked up on my first mortal watch of this story. And when I first watched every episode of the series, I liked pretty much all of them, which couldn't be further from the case anymore. Seriously, releasing at midnight on a Friday, I personally am not really bothered by, but it's undeniably damaged the viewership a lot, and for me, has essentially meant watching the series through a blurred lens that has led to me having some awful initial first impressions, which you would not know, but also fuck you, I'm blaming you. So the Doctor finds out that the urn is voice activated, just keep that in mind for now, and him and Ruby speak to an AI version of Veta from the beginning, which is such a truly twisted, awful sentiment for the episode to show, which I found fascinating. The thought that the Villengard Corporation is that disconnected and the world is so fucked that they think it's a good idea to have a testicle tube full of your remains spit out an AI version of yourself that says thoughts and prayers to you is such a grim thought, but it's also so fantastic for that reason. I really hope that by the time I'm dead, no one makes an AI version of me unless it's doing some funny shit.
What happened to you, John?
I was humanely terminated on the discovery of the fatal condition, blindness.
Blindness isn't fatal.
You literally just said that to a dead blind guy.
I think this may have been the first time in actual years that a Moffat joke was woven into a Doctor Who story and doesn't detract from anything and is actually funny. The fact that I'm actually somewhat enjoying Moffat Doctor Who again is so surreal. I honestly never thought I'd see the day. So we get the episode's overall message of fuck capitalism, which I do quite like. Duh. But it then brings into question why these ambulances were even purchased in the first place. Now obviously everywhere needs ambulances, but with these ones having gone apparently haywire to the point where they'd kill someone for being temporarily visually impaired, then why the fuck would you get so many? Especially if you're starting a war, and a war in which... you know what, it makes more sense to rant about later, so I'll save it. So the annoying little shit from the opening shows up looking for her dad. No idea how she managed to get out of the base without anyone noticing, especially since she's a child, the only child around, but whatever, just accept it because plot. And I also have no idea how she managed to traverse all the way here from the base without stepping on a goddamn landmine, but whatever! Just accept it, because plot. And I just can't believe that even 7 years after his last story, Moffat never got over the annoying trope of unnecessarily including annoying children in his stories that cannot act to save their fucking lives. And it's so much more egregious here than usual, because the dialogue written is so obviously written for someone who's meant to be much younger in mind. So the absolutely awful dialogue she has is even worse because this 10-year-old is speaking like she's fucking 3. You absolute spoon. So she yaps on about looking for her dad, and while Shooty and Millie absolutely kill this scene, the kid's acting is just so bad, so wooden, so flat, that it completely shatters the immersion for the scene entirely, and that really is a shame because the situation they're in cannot be a pleasant one. Having to tell a kid that her dad is dead, and that the Doctor is holding his remains, while also then finding out that her mum is dead as well.
Oh, that's good, isn't it?
Unfortunately, this potentially good scene is even further undermined when for some pig ignorant reason, after we find out the kid's called Splice, she will still be referred to as little shit by me, don't you worry, the Doctor then asks for her full name. Now cut back to what I just said you had to remember before.
Your loss.
Oh, voice activated.
Why the fuck would you ask for her full name when you clearly know who she is? You stupid bitch! So exactly what you think is going to happen happens, and it's only stopped because after a ridiculously long amount of time, doesn't even fucking matter how long, because regardless either way, it's too fucking long, Ruby points out to the little shit that the doctor stood on a landmine. If only she could have seen what he was stood on the entire time. And also, you know how this could have easily been prevented? Oh my god, is that my dad over there? No, wait, no, don't, he's stood on a landmine. He's stood on a landmine. Oh, so I definitely shouldn't go over there to where my dad is. No. Just wait until we get this all sorted and then you can see your dad. Fair enough. I'll just wait. Yeah. Simple solution. So the doctor starts glowing for literally no reason and then stops because... plot, I guess. And then Monday arrives in the episode properly. Great name. And she asks the basic questions of, what are they doing here, blah blah blah, before the doctor gets in a great line.
Great name, Monday Flynn. You should marry Ruby. Then you'll be Monday Sunday. Go on, get married. I'd laugh every day.
Yeah, hilarious. But don't you think there could be a much more suitable time for this, Doctor? I think there's much more pressing issues at hand here, like the massive fuck-off gun that's pointed at you, that you're fully aware of. If she fires, you'll blow up the fucking planet, you cretin! So we further this story's cringe love subplot for a little bit before the Doctor asks about what war they're fighting, and instead of asking the very reasonable questions back of how these strangers aren't aware of what war they're in or what planet they're on, we just get exposition instead. Yay, plot contrivance. It's only for the fucking more billionth fucking time this series already, and we're only on episode 4. What have I gotten myself into? So the Doctor further reinforces how stupid the notion of fighting enemies which you don't even know what they look like is. And then we get literally the most perfect example of Moffat's style over substance bollocks writing, where in order for the cool shit to happen, the Doctor has to act like a belligerent donkey for 4 fucking minutes straight! He has not just said, I'm a Time Lord, scan me, I'll blow up the planet. How insanely fucking empty-headed and brain-dead are we expected to think that the Doctor is for not just saying this shit immediately? Are you actually being for real, man?
No.
What?
I said no.
Why not?
I don't want to.
Doesn't make any sense.
Too bad.
Okay, so after that entire conversation that happened before, after she raises the gun to him, after she asks him to drop the casket, after she explains what the landmines do, after she aims the gun at his arm, after he asks her to explain immolation, after she shoots him the first time, after she shoots him the second time, after she shoots him a third fucking time, only then does this absolute dilem tell her to scan him. Are you fucking serious?
How was this made? Seriously, how was this ever acceptable? That this could not have flown back then, even then, right?
So 15 really is just as much of an idiot as the 12th Doctor. So we then get a very double-edged scene here. Yeah, you can tell I'm reviewing a Moffat story now, in which, because Monday was stupid enough to shoot the Doctor in the first place, despite him also being an absolute plonker for not explaining himself, the ambulances activate, because it detected combat and is going after the Doctor. This scene's intensity would be very complimentary if it didn't intercut between scenes of the annoying little shit scrolling through Facebook pictures of her dad while it's going on. Was that really necessary? Does it really add anything to this scene? What? No? It completely detracts from the scene and is distracting as fuck? Well, colour me considerably unimpressed and not remotely surprised, because that's been the majority of this episode so far, I'm afraid. So the ambulance starts tweaking because the Doctor isn't human, and Ruby clocks on that if she distracts it enough, it might detach from the Doctor. It doesn't, but at least that was a good idea and not contrived or anything. What is contrived is how easily Ruby manages to get the gun off Monday. How insanely fucking inept is this shit for brain twat soldier that a random civilian lass is able to just get a gun off her immediately? Why is it a constant pattern that in almost every Moffat story from 2010 onwards, that everyone in the story has to be so fucking thick in order for the plot to even work? So Mundy tells Ruby to shoot her in the arm so that the ambulance will be distracted. And then we get an actually good fake out death. And for once, it's actually fucking earned and feels tense. Seriously, besides the contrived timing of this Muppet showing up, this moment plays out absolutely brilliantly, and it actually does serve a good purpose in the story, because it forces the Doctor to lock the fuck in, and it raises the incredibly marred stakes effectively, because now, not only is the Doctor on a timer to death, so is Ruby, because she could actually die here. The only issues with this really are, well, like I said, the timing of this clown showing up is slightly contrived. Like, seriously? It only takes 4 minutes to get here from the base. We also very obviously know that Ruby won't die since this is only episode 4. Of course she won't die. And the other big issue is really, well, despite this episode making her a character, I still feel absolutely no connection to her, to be honest. So I wouldn't really feel anything if she actually did die. I mean, honestly, hands up, this is a really well done scene. Even the appearance of the snow works well into building up the stakes since it freezes in midair after the Doctor says when there's snow there's hope. I think this might actually be the only scene with the snow which isn't retroactively shit after the finale. I mean, it still makes no sense that it's here, but it works into the scene quite well since it isn't being used as a mystery hook bullshit and is only really used to boost the drama, which I can admire that it at least works if the eventual reveal is non-existent nonsense.
Next of kin. Who is the next of kin?
I don't know. Maybe the woman who single-handedly raised you for 19 years, you inconsiderate bitch. I hate to bait the review of the finale again, but I'll touch on that when we get there. So we get a really great bit of editing with the Doctor's world crumbling around him and the mine rising simultaneously, before we get an unfortunate episode-ruining reveal. While the Doctor is extremely based in this scene,
I mean, most armies would notice that they were fighting smoke and shadows, but not this lot. You know why? Because they have faith.
Shut up!
Faith, the magic word that keeps you never having to think for yourself.
like, ridiculously, extremely fucking based.
What, seriously? Now you need proof. Faith, Giao.
The overall reveal of this is honestly maybe in contention for one of the stupidest, most contrived things that Moffat has ever done. And as an expert in how shitty he is at Doctor Who, this is honestly insane to say in current year. So it's slowly revealed to us throughout the scene, even though time is of the essence, that the Anglican Marines aren't fighting anyone. And when they sent off their warning shots, it set off the Villain Guard algorithm, so they've been fighting their own technology this whole time. While I can at least rate that there's some subtle build up to this throughout the story, if you really think about this for more than a second, you realize how ludicrously fucking senseless this all is. So you're seriously trying to tell me that this entire time, not one of these absolute fucking monkeys realized that they weren't fighting anyone? You know how many situations in which more than one person goes out, which they could easily clock onto the fact that no one is being fought against? And why the fuck do you keep buying technology from this company if you clearly know it's capable of going rogue? Why would they trust the Villain Guard Corporation if the casualty rate keeps going up the more they buy stuff from them? But yet they still haven't seen a single fucking Castarian. Be fucking for real. You would have to actively fucking try to not see this shit happening and notice that you aren't fighting anyone. And this bullshit has been going on for 6 months. And if these dumb fucks were to keep buying technology from Villain Guard, then surely this advanced futuristic shown to at least be somewhat intelligent characters before would think to program the technology to not go off on their own soldiers, you delinquent! And why in the shit, in the name of all that's twat, would they keep getting these ambulances which are fucked up enough to the point that they kill you if you aren't fit enough to participate in a war? Keep 'em dying, keep 'em buying, I guess. Yeah, until the inevitable moment where someone sees that they kill someone and then you just fucking shut them down or break them. Oh, the weapons are programmed to not be able to damage Villain Guard equipment? Then fucking get weapons from somewhere else, you donut! Also, literally a hammer, literally a bat, literally fucking any fucking equipment you can think of that isn't technology based. Also, remember that these absolutely, unforgivably stupid cunts have scanners on their guns. Are you seriously trying to tell me that they got here and in the fucking 6 months they've been here, did not once one of these fucking morons think to scan the planet for life before just immediately presuming that they're being attacked by people hiding in the fucking mud? How fucking fat-headed are we expected to believe that all of the Anglican Marines are, that not a single one of them thought to do this? This entire story is built around these Muppets being so brain dead to the point where they kill themselves in circles for 6 months and don't even notice. Are you fucking... Yeah, unsurprisingly, this absolutely kills this episode. Despite it having good character... Actually, scratch that. Despite this episode having acceptable characterization for the Doctor and Ruby, and a few decent scenes, it's pretty much all undermined and ruined by how unrealistically stupid everyone besides the leads has to be for this plot to even work. And all of this in favor of an anti-capitalist and anti-religion message, 2 messages that Moffat has handled way better before, not to the detriment of other characters. Yeah. Fuck you! Even the Doctor's brilliant lines throughout this scene cannot distract you from how insanely broken this makes this episode. And believe it or not, it somehow gets even worse.
Prove it.
Does your arsehole get jealous of the shit that comes out of your mouth? The Doctor then tries to get the Veta AI to prove that he's right and send the message that all the casualty is hardware driven. The AI says no, then the Doctor says, "Dad to dad, do it for the little shit." So he does. LOL. So somehow Veta's AI goes through the Doctor and then into the ambulance. Don't worry, it's never explained. And after another cringe cliche love scene between these 2 dimensionless twits that fucking bangs on and on and on as if we're meant to care. Like, seriously? You expect me to care about these characters who have no development anyway, and are also quite literally some of the stupidest people in the entire history of the galaxy, in every galaxy in the fucking universe. Oh, and then the allegedly advanced Villain Guard algorithm is defeated by the power of love. Moffat, it is 2020 fucking 4! You cannot write the power of love as a resolution anymore! Just fucking drop it! No one likes it! No one ever did! It just gets worse and worse the more you do it! Why do you always insist on this bullshit? Yeah, so unsurprisingly, that shit fucking sucked balls, and it's genuinely played off as a miracle moment, as if it's not the most cringe thing in Doctor Who since those things.
The whole Villain Guard arms industry, all of it, just got beaten up by this little kid's dad.
How could you actually write this and not realize how stupid it sounds?
The whole Villain Guard mainframe has been taken down by parent power.
That is not fucking funny, you retard.
Oh my god. So we get an awful shot of the characters looking at an obvious screen, and we get a line which reaffirms how much character Ruby lacks when written by Russell.
Right, enough of that. Moving on. Come on, Ruby.
No, hang on, we've had like 2 minutes of the awesome.
Remember how no such thing was said in episode 1? LaMayo. So the little shit says some dumb shit and we get more ball tickling.
I will be popping in every now and then. Fish fingers and custard is my favourite.
Don't remind me that you used to be somewhat capable of writing good Doctor Who, please. And after an admittedly beautiful Moffat Doctor Who speech, that's this clusterfuck over. And oh dearie me. So, that was Boom. And unfortunately, yet again, this is another episode which I used to really like, but upon further inspection I realise is just a load of shit. Something I fear I'll be saying a lot this series, because fucking hell Moffat didn't half drop the ball on this one. While if you watch this episode with your brain turned off, it works fine, that can literally apply to everything and anything. And I think the reason so many people, me included, thought that this episode was good was just because of how it actually feels like an episode of Doctor Who, as opposed to Russell's bizarre midlife crisis masquerading as Doctor Who. The few positives first. The Doctor and Ruby are pretty great in this episode. For the first time this series, which is really embarrassing considering how far in we are, and how far into this video I am, the two of them actually feel like real people. Like actual characters, with depth, and not just cardboard best mates who feel useless to the plot. Here, they're written with so much wit, so much banter, and actually interesting confliction that was so sorely missed from the last couple of episodes that they're enjoyable enough on that merit alone. However, that doesn't excuse the fact that they are basically just 12 and Clara played by different actors. And funnily enough, if you've seen my Series 9 video or any Series 10 review, then you know how much I dislike 12 and Clara. But honestly, it's so refreshing to see this dynamic again, even if this is ultimately just really lazy on Moffat's behalf, and Russell's for clearly not editing the script or the dialogue or anything. The visuals and overall presentation of this story is also the best the series has had so far. There was no shitty editing decisions, the directing was pretty good, and besides this awful shot here at the end, this episode is glorious on the eyes. And there is a few good scenes here and there, but that's where the positives end really. The entire crux of the plot to this story is built on actual fucking nonsense that's the driving force behind everything in the story. Seriously, even ignoring the fact that these morons keep buying technology off an evil corporation that they are aware gives them fucky ambulances, it's absolutely insane to think that these absolute helmets have been fighting nothing but smoke and shadows for 6 months and never even thought to scan the planet or just survey the planet in whatever transport they used to get here or anything. It's fucking insane how stupid these cunts have to be for this story to function on almost any level. On top of loads of other standard Moffatisms that drag this story down, like style over substance bullshit, awful unnecessary child actors who can't act, taking up too much of the story, and everyone but the Doctor and Companion, and even both of them sometimes, having to actually have fucking CTE brain damage in order for the plot to work. Meaning that, overall, Boom is fucking terrible. Which really is a shame because that also applies to the next episode. Which, at least as far as I can remember, is the most botched grey episode of Doctor Who in a very long time. What do I mean by this? You'll have to wait and see. Oh yeah, up next is 69 Yards. 20 whole years of age and I get paid to wear this shit. Fucking hell. Cartoon ass sneeze.